let's go. Cool. Alrighty. So when it comes to rebuttaling, do you guys ever feel like you're like arguing or like being too pushy, or you run out of things to say, or what's like the main key issue? And more so in regards to not Alicia and Tika, because you guys still in training, so no worries on y'all. But the others, what do y'all deal with?
I already got insurance. I just got off one actually with a one-legger, but this lady was a child safety ID kit, so I didn't know she was married, obviously, until we got into the presentation. And but we made a date to get on Saturday with her husband. But every time it doesn't go as easy, like where she's like, "Yo, I want it." She was like, "Yeah, we don't have any insurance, so I need to get with him." And you know, of course, I pushed the point to see if she would bite. You know, I was like, I try to see where she was at, because you could say, well, you always make decisions when, you know, if it's something beneficial for the family. If he was the past, you know, of course, wouldn't he want you to have the money to pay for his funeral? And so I went that way. But then it got to a point she was like, you know, no, we need to make it together. But I do want the insurance. Boom, boom, boom. So I get that sometimes. And of course, I already have insurance.
Okay. So I already have insurance. I don't really ever get that. I think I'm really proactive with it. So one thing you guys should know about me is that I'm like super, super straightforward with people. Like I don't really care about their feeling towards me. In the beginning, I ask for permission to be 100% honest, even if it gets uncomfortable, and I always get permission. Once I get that permission, it's like I can pretty much say what I want, right, without being disrespectful. So the only time I deal with that, I have insurance elsewhere, is if I'm calling a lapsed POS and they're like, yeah, I canceled because I went with this other company, right? So the only really time I deal with it. And the major way I go through it is I think I build so much exclusivity into the company itself that I make people want to get us on top of what they have, right? So I'll say something like, for your example, it's a child safe. Right. So I'm like, hey, listen, Shelby, you know, I don't know if you know this, but American Income, and this is while I have them on Zoom, by the way, like I don't do any rebuttals on the phone. So while I have them on Zoom, if they're like on the phone, if they're like, yeah, I have insurance through work, let's say if it's a referral, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly why your mom wanted me to talk to you, but no worries, it's going to be quick. You know, if it's a child safe kit, they don't even know it's going to be about insurance until I get them on Zoom. So once I get them on Zoom, I get to the needs analysis and they're telling me all this stuff. I'll say, guys, you have to realize that American Income, we're the only unionized insurance company in the world authorized to handle benefits for union members, right? So police, firefighters, teachers, and veterans. So we don't handle benefits for the general public. So if you're not part of an authorized group, or you weren't sponsored in by someone that cared about you enough to give you access to us, you wouldn't even be talking to me right now. Okay. And the big reason why people try to get qualified for American Income is because we eliminate something called the widow's blackout period. Have you guys heard of that? They're always like, what's that, right? And I'm like, it's a term that came up in the late 60s, and it stands for the period of time that a surviving spouse or children have to wait to receive a life insurance benefit, right? So benefits through your employer, benefits through State Farm, Mutual of Omaha, Allstate, all of these companies are amazing, right? Never talk about company. They're all fantastic, but we legally take 2 to 9 months to actually pay out a benefit to the family. And not even to mention, if you have benefits through your job, cool. One, they're not permanent. And two, honestly, if something were to happen to Joe, do you have someone to call? Do you even know how to file that claim? Can you imagine how frustrating it would be to like not know anything about his benefits, trying to file a claim, and you don't know who to call or what to do? Right? So the reason why people choose American Income and try to get access to us is because we eliminate that. So with that freedom of choice certificate, which is patented, only American Income has it, because we handle benefits for union members, we're typically going to be the first check in a family's home. Right? So when people try to get American Income, we're never to replace any insurance you have. I like the thought of having eggs in different baskets, guys. But my priority is making sure that when your husband doesn't come home, you get that check immediately. So while the family's waiting on hundreds of thousands of dollars to come in with your other companies, your funeral is taken care of, and you can take a couple days off work after you just lost the person you've been laying in bed next to for the last 45 years. Does that make sense? So that's how I squash that. And they don't bring it up again.
I'll still be like, no, I'm good. No,
I mean, if they say that, no, they're good. I've never had that. I don't say that as like a rebuttal. I say that, for example, at like the list of concerns on the final expense concern. Right. So if I feel like there's any chance that I'm going to get that objection. And I'll usually know by the time I get to the needs analysis. Also, when I'm at the needs analysis, I'm never like, do you guys have insurance through work? I'm always very assumptive. I'm like, so you guys got benefits through the group, right? Through your job? Okay, perfect. Do you know how much they provide? No, you don't know. Is it like the basic, like you don't pay for anything extra, like 50,000, the standard, what they cover everyone with? Okay, cool. And then I'm like, do you guys have anything permanent that you own that's going to be there for your family, you know, if you lose your job or retire? And they'll be like, yeah, we have something. I'm like, cool. And who do you have that with? Allstate. Perfect. Did you go with a 20-year term or did you go with a 30-year term? Never going to ask if they have whole life or term life. They always going to say whole life.
And then that's when you go over that, the next thing, when you go into that, what you said first.
So that's where I'm getting my answers, right? So now that I know that they've got a $30,000, it doesn't matter how much insurance they have or who they have it with. I know that they're going to tell me I've got benefits at work and I told you I had this and this at State Farm. So when I get to the list of concerns, the list of concerns is like my bread and butter, right? Because that's where I'm creating a huge problem before I offer the solution. So my favorite part of a presentation is the list of concerns, because you have to create such a big concern for there even to be a solution in the first place. So at the list of concerns is when I'm pretty much proactively overcoming a lot of my rebuttals. So when I get to that second concern, I'll go over what I just went over.
Perfect. Now the question, do you share the list of concerns so they can see it, or you just verbalize it?
Absolutely. I share it because I feel like when people can see something and they can hear it, then it's going to resonate a lot more. When you can see it and you can hear it at the same time. Now, do I share all of them? Absolutely not. I'll cut my screen so then they can only literally see what I want them to see. So they only see this.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Right. So when I get to the funeral and final expenses, my list of concerns and the way I sell is very, very emotional. Right. So when I'm going through this, this is probably the easiest way. If you master this, then you're not going to get many objections. Right. If you master this on top of your presentation, you're not really going to get a lot of pushback. So on things like income protection, right? So I'm like, the third concern, guys, is your paycheck. And I'm always trying to get them to respond and to answer things for me. So I said in that video the other day, I'm like, when we say something, it means one thing, but when they say it, it means everything, right? So I'm trying to get them to almost sell themselves and doubt what they thought they knew, right? Without making it seem, you know, passive aggressive or anything. So I'm like, guys, the third concern has to do with your paycheck. So Joe, what do you think happens to your paycheck if you didn't come home tomorrow? What would he say? It would stop.
He's not going to have one.
Right. So I'm like, exactly, you know, because Joe, when a member dies, their paycheck's going to die with them, but the bills don't stop coming in. Right. And I don't have a doubt in my mind, Mary, that you're going to push through and you're going to pick up the hours that he was working. But my concern with that is that now the kids are going to lose both parents instead of one, because you're going to be working like 3 jobs to support them. Does that make sense? Can you guys understand why that was one of the biggest concerns for families? So pay attention to what I say, but also pay attention to the tonality and the way I'm saying it. Right. I feel like women have such a power because we can bring compassion and sincerity into those moments that need it. Right. There's a difference between me saying, guys, the third concern is paycheck loss. Because Joe, what happens to your check if you're gone? Yeah, it doesn't come in anymore. Right. So the bills don't stop coming in. Right. So all tonality is speaking louder, speaking softer, speaking higher, speaking lower, and knowing when to emphasize certain things. So if I'm saying something that I want to be emphasized, I'm going to almost like tighten my throat a little bit, like I'm feeling for them, right? I'm like, that was a huge concern for families, guys. Can you guys understand? You know, Mary, what do you think would happen? What would think would happen if Joe's paycheck just stopped coming in? The mortgage isn't going to cut in half. Your bills aren't going to cut in half. Everything's going to stay the same. Now you're having to take care of the mortgage. You're having to work your job. You're having to take care of the kids. It's going to be impossible. And then she's just sitting there like, damn. So throughout the list of concerns, I'm like picking and poking at them, right? I'm like kind of jabbing them and getting them to see that these are gaps, right? And it ties right into mortgage. I'm like, guys, you know, with your mortgage is the next biggest thing. I don't know if you guys have heard the phrase, lose your spouse, lose your house. Have you heard that? Because typically what happens, guys, is when a member dies, their paycheck dies with them, right? So families always lose their home first after the death of a breadwinner. But I would ask them a question in the beginning. I'm like, Joe, like, hear me out, man. If you're gone and your paycheck is gone, what do you think is going to happen to the home? And 9 out of 10 times, you know what they say? They say, we're going to lose it. We. I say, no, Joe, Mary and the kids are going to lose it because you're not going to be here anymore. So these little things are picking at them and making sure that they know that these aren't just concerns generally for the like normal family. These are their concerns, right? And I never really have someone say, oh, I've got something for that. Oh, I've got something for that. If I get that kind of person, I don't even want to sit down with you. I'm like, if you're not even willing to listen and I'm talking to a brick wall, I'm gonna say respectfully, you know, I feel like I'm talking to a brick wall because every time I say something, you've got something quick to combat it. The reality is I'm trying to show you and educate you on some benefits that no one talks about, right? And 76% of the United States don't have life insurance, and it's not because they don't want it or because they don't need it. It's because there's no education. Right. So if we get anything off of this call today, guys, you guys are going to be way more educated than the family next door because you guys are going to understand your gaps. And if I can get you qualified for it, guys, I'm going to make sure we hop off this call and I take those concerns with me and I leave you with peace of mind. Does that make sense? So that's kind of how I go about it. So if you get real solid with the list of concerns, you're not going to deal with a lot of objections. Questions on that?
Yeah, when you said earlier, you said the widow's something. What was that you said?
The widow's blackout period.
The widow's blackout period. Now, what was that again?
So it's a term, and I'm going to send everyone this recording so you can listen back and write the verbiage down. So the widow's blackout period, Caitlin, you raised your hand really quick. What's up?
Oh, I was saying that's perfect. Please definitely send that to me.
I gotcha. I'll just probably put it in Dropbox and put the link in the chat, and then leaders can share it to the agents. So the widow's blackout period is a term that came up in the late 60s, and it stands for the period of time that a surviving spouse and children have to wait to receive a life insurance benefit, right? So benefits through your employer, State Farm, Mutual of Omaha, you know, whatever company it is, they're amazing companies, got amazing benefits, but I've personally seen them legally take 2 to 9 months to pay out. So I've seen families that I deal with State Farm, with group benefits, over $1 million in coverage, and they're sitting on ice while their families are doing GoFundMe, begging their family and friends for money because they're waiting on a check to come in. So can you guys see why that was such a huge concern? So I squashed the insurance elsewhere. They don't even bring it up again.
Boom. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like if you do this correctly in regards to the list of concerns, then I'll see if I can find the verbiage that I typed out that I trained my agents with, and I'll copy that link in the chat too. But if you get really good at that, the only objection you should get at the end is affordability, right? It's literally the only objection I get, unless it's some like off the wall, like that's the only one I get, right? So when it's coming into affordability and I'm sitting down with, let's say, you guys sit down with a lot of seniors, child safe kids, what kind of people do y'all sit down with? Average age, 30, 40s?
Like singles, families, things like that. And just to piggyback off of what you were talking about with I have enough insurance, you will have those people who feel like they know everything. So they're like, oh no, I have 250,000. She has $1 million policy on me, all those things. What you want to really zone in on that part is letting them know that that is not permanent. That stays. Like, you really want to say, oh, I mean, that's amazing. I'm so happy that you have that much insurance, because you want them to make sure that they feel like they've done something good. The last thing you want to do is say, oh, I mean, but you don't have that no more. I mean, like when you die, you know, whatever, like you don't want to do that. You want to say, oh my, I'm so proud of you. That, I mean, like, that's amazing. I'm happy that you've even thought about that. Most times when I sit down with people, they don't even have that. So, I mean, that's great. When I think about it, not even, but when I think about it, you know, when I think about it, did you know that that's not permanent and portable for your children? How long have you been at that job? Oh, I've been there for like 15 years. But when did you consider and talk about like what happens when you retire? So now they're thinking, oh man, I am getting close to retirement. And then sometimes they're like, well, I've only been at this job for 1 year. Oh, okay, so what were you doing before? Before that, I was doing this. Okay, so what were you doing before that? And then now you're letting them know, like, I don't even stay in places long enough for me to keep my insurance. So that you zone in on, you need to be in charge and in control of your insurance. It don't matter if you hopped from Texas to Michigan to California. As long as you're taking care of your premium, you have this insurance. Like, this is your contribution to your family. I don't even say premium. I say contribution. This is a contribution to your family.
Mhm.
So some of those little tweaks and words matter. So you will have those, and just like Monica said, perfect, that's perfect. And you will have those that just like, I mean, but I have so much. I mean, I really do have enough insurance. It's just me, my son, and, you know, my husband. Okay. But what happens if you, you know, go into the hospital due to a long illness? What happens if we go into another pandemic? There were so many people that lost their job that they had been at for decades, that they were counting on those benefits. And now they've been there since they were in their 20s. Now they're in their 60s and they don't have nothing. So you really want to zone in on the permanent part and how they are not in control of it. And most times, if it's a woman and a man, especially if it's a man there, he wants to be in control. He wants to be the alpha. And when we know that the women really run the household and they really make the decisions, and even if you're on there with like a couple, you have to make sure that that woman loves you. She has to love you, because ultimately, if you ask him, I know you're the breadwinner. Okay, me and Monica, let's say she's the man. Okay, Monica, I know that you're the breadwinner and everything, but when I really think about it, like, is this affordable for you? I mean, like, what are you thinking? And she says, oh yeah, I mean, I think everything is cool. And then their head do this. They look directly to their wife, directly to their spouse, because what he's accustomed to is her making the decision and him paying for it. So if you get her to love you, he's automatically going to follow. So it's really good to identify the roles in the relationship. Most times, even in, and I know some of us are married on here, have spouses and things like that, and you really thinking about it like, yeah, if I say we're going to get a blue couch, we get a blue couch. If we get gray curtains, we get gray curtains. So really zone in on that point too. It's not permanent for them. If anything happens to them, they lose those benefits and that $1 million is gone. And then you have to see if you can qualify for something else. But what qualifies you is your health. So what is your health going to look like at 60?
Mhm.
We don't know.
And I think one important thing to take away from that is be careful with the verbiage that you use, right? So I never say premium, I never say bill. I say either contribution or investment, right? When I'm talking about our plans, I never say cheap, I say affordable, I say economical. I never say expensive. When talking about our plans, I say top of the line, right? If I'm talking about someone else's insurance, I'm like, that's expensive, but this is top of the line, right? So be very careful on the verbiage. Just like when you're like, oh, I'm going to take away a few things, we're going to bring the premium down. No, I'm going to adjust a couple of things and make sure not to take anything away, but I'm going to make sure that we can go ahead and get you guys enrolled in this, right? So a lot of people have failed to understand. I don't think affordability exists, right? I think people choose not to want to make the necessary adjustments, and they're only choosing that because you didn't make it important enough for them to see the urgency and that those adjustments need to be made right now. Because the same person telling you no that they can't afford an $80 plan for their family is spending $120 on cable, $80 on their pedicure and manicure. They're going to Chick-fil-A, Starbucks at least once or twice a week. That money's going to get spent, right? But if you don't create a big enough problem and a big enough concern, they're not going to see the urgency in making the adjustments now. So when people tell me no, I don't hear no. I hear that they just don't know enough to make those adjustments, right? So like I said, I'm a very emotional kind of seller. So I'm always going to put them in position to answer my questions, because the person asking questions in a sit is always in control, right? So in regards to the benefit program, I mean, a lot of people that I see make the mistake is as soon as they get an affordability objection, they immediately cut down the premium, right? You can't do that, right? Because you just spent a whole hour telling them why they needed this $120, $160 plan. And the moment they told you they couldn't afford it, you cut it in half or you dropped it down to $80, right? That's like me trying to sell you a car. And I'm like, yeah, this car is going to be $6,000. And you're like, oh no, baby, that's too expensive. I'm like, no worries, one sec. When we take out the engine, take off the doors, and we take off the wheels, now it's only $350. You want the car? No, because you removed every piece of value that you just spent an hour building up. Right. So I'm going to fight for my initial premium, my initial premium for the policy first. I'm going to fight for it a couple of times. And I'm going to say something like, Guys, could you help me understand? You remember 10 minutes ago when we were going through it, and I was like, you get an extra hour at work, you're not going to buy a Ferrari, but if you lose an hour, you're not going to like cancel cable, right? Did something happen? Did you get a call or a text from 10 minutes ago to right now that kind of changed your perspective? Because this is that 1 hour. What are they going to say? Oh, well, I didn't really put it together that it would be monthly. Right? I'm like, listen, this is, what the software says is going to make sure that your family is protected, and it never exceeds more than 4% of your family's annual income. Because guys, it's not my job to take food off your table. It's my job to keep food on the table when you're not here anymore. Does that make sense? So if that 1 hour is going to stress you out, make things really, really tight, make you cancel your kids' dentist appointments, how much of your hour do you feel like you can set aside to make sure that your family's financial well-being is going to be taken care of when you don't come home tomorrow? Do you think you can set aside maybe like 45 or 50 minutes? That first 45 minutes on a Monday morning, you're talking to the coworkers, spilling coffee in your shirt. Do you think you can set that aside? Okay, perfect. Let me make some adjustments. Go ahead and grab your driver's license, guys. Mary, you're going to be the beneficiary, right? And then just move into the application. Like I'd be like halfway through the app before they even told me like, yes. Right. So you just got to be extremely assumptive. And if someone tells me no, I'm kind of like, unless they don't qualify, I'm kind of shocked. Right. I'm like, oh, snap. I mean, I thought I was pretty good at this. I haven't had a family, go say no to the benefits. Can I add, like, my breath smell? Do you guys not like me, or what's up? Right. And they'll usually laugh and be like, no, you were great. We see the value, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, listen, guys, you want to make sure to sell yourself. Right. Because the value of the program is cool, but them having someone to call on the worst day of their life is better. Right. It's that peace of mind. So I'm always tying things in like, guys, I just want to be the person that your wife calls on the worst day of her life. And she knows that Monica's going to make sure that everything's taken care of and those kids are going to be okay. All right. So if you guys give me 1% of your confidence, I'll earn the other 99. Okay. So do you guys think this $30 a week is comfortable, or should we adjust it a little bit? I don't really get many rebuttals, so I get, maybe I'll give 5 or 6 objections, or I'll give 5 or 6 rebuttals. If I feel like I've got a chance at closing them and they're just being stubborn, I'll go back and forth a good 6, 7, 8 times, right? But you won't be able to do that if you only know 2 rebuttals, right? So you got to make sure your arsenal is full and your tool belt is full with different tools and different things that you can utilize. Because if you only know I can understand that it's difficult nowadays to make ends meet, and that's the only one then the rest of the time you're kind of just spitting stuff out of your butt and you don't really know, what to say. And they can tell, right? Then you start to come off as salesy. Then you start to get that commission breath, because then it seems like you're panicking because you're not prepared, right? If you're prepared and you've got if they're logical people, I'm going to use the money machine analogy. If they're emotional people, I'm going to use I can understand that it's difficult nowadays to make ends meet, but it's not just the verbiage, it's how you say it. So practice tonality, research tonality. In this business, guys, we get paid very well to effectively communicate with people. So if you're not studying communication, and if you're not studying like people's body language and how they're responding to you, then you're already missing a big portion of it. Because we lost the chance to be interactive with them, like to be in their home. Like if I was in their home and Joe's arms were crossed, you know what I'm gonna do to get him to uncross his arms? I'm gonna give him something to hold. Joe, hold this for me real quick. He's gonna hold it and force him to uncross his arms, and then I can continue with the presentation. He's gonna be holding that freedom of choice for 30 minutes. Right? So we lost that ability. So now if someone's arms are crossed and be like, Joe, are you cold? What's up? Like, you kind of close up, you cold? And he's like, no, I ain't cold. And so he automatically uncross his arms. You just want to make sure that they understand that you believe in the benefits. I think I saw something in the chat. How would you handle someone that says, I have enough assets, I don't need more life insurance? What was the scenario, Megan?
Yeah, I misspelled assets. Anyways, so I had sat with the lady, very well off, very well to do. She already had like $100,000 in whole life. She had, with her company, whatever, whatnot, right? And she didn't give me affordability, but she told me, she was like, well, why would I need to add more when I have my house that's completely paid for here in River Oaks, and my car's completely paid for, and my kids are going to school on a full ride scholarship. I don't have any debt, and they're not going to have any debt because they can just sell my assets when it's all said and done. So my rebuttal to that was, I'm like, well, wouldn't you want them to have that house that's completely paid for to live in, plus the money to help make ends meet and, monthly bills that come along with that house? And she was like, no, they can just sell it. It's not a big deal. I'm like, I was stumped. I didn't know what to say.
Well, they can't sell it overnight.
Right.
Sorry, Monica. Like, sorry, like they can't, like everything is a process, number one. Like, and I would have said that politely. Like, so okay, like, you know, if you're okay with your family like selling your home, like, but I mean, you know for a fact as well as I do, that home's gonna sit on Zillow for like, you know, at least a couple weeks, if not a few months. I mean, we're in a pandemic right now. Like if something happened to you, like even tomorrow, like they can't sell it overnight. Things still
Well,
have to get paid.
Well, and she wasn't married, so it was like you had said, Monica. I remember months ago, you had said something hard at the door, easy on the floor. And I thought about you during that sit, and I could not overcome that.
Yeah. So she already had it in her mind that she wanted the house to be sold. So you can't convince her that, oh, don't you want them to keep the house? It kind of comes off as salesy, right? In the same breath that what Chloe said was solid, but it kind of comes off as combative, right? Well, you're not going to sell it overnight. If you're dealing with like a boss lady who takes care of her own stuff, she's going to be like, so I got money in the bank. Like I ain't worried about it, right?
I mean, that's pretty much what she said.
Yeah, I would always just more so worry about asking people questions. And I'm like, have you ever, if you don't mind me, have you sold a home before? Let her answer it. She's either going to say yes or no, right? If she says yes, how long did that take? Oh, it took like 3 weeks to get off the market and then another like 2 weeks to close it. Like exactly. And then the 100,000, was it through her job or through American Income?
Through us.
Through American Income. Okay. So on situations like that, I'm trying to think, because usually when I go into a POS with like a ton of coverage, I ask what it was for, and then I spend their insurance, right? So $100,000 to some people seems like a lot of money, right? It's not that much money. So when I'm going over a POS, I kind of do it differently. In my approach with a POS, it's like, all right, guys, you know, my name's Monica. I'm a conservation manager. I'm going to do 3 things with you guys today. First thing I'm going to do is recap, review what you got, cash value, what you're paying for, so you know exactly where your money's going. Make sense? Second thing I'm going to do is go over the complimentary benefits the company provides and make sure we get your sponsorships taken care of, because you only get a few per year. And then the last thing I'm going to do with you guys is a no cost needs analysis survey that they do complimentary for you guys. People pay $200-300 for this, but because you're with AIL, they do it for free. All right. So we're going to do a no cost needs analysis. They're going to put your coverage in, ask you some questions. If there's gaps, I'll review it with you. And if there's not, we're good to go. The good thing is I talk pretty fast because I know the last thing you want to be doing on Friday is talking about some insurance. So we good? All right, let me get into it. Right. So they know in their head exactly what I'm going to do. And it's very transparent. Right. So when I'm going over her coverage, I'm like, yeah, I'm looking here that you had, you know, $100,000 of whole life insurance. Whole life is like my favorite insurance, because no matter if you die tomorrow or 300 years from now, that's a guaranteed payout for your family. So if you don't mind me asking, what did you get that set up for? Some people set it up to like, you know, for an education for their kids. Some people set it up just to not be a burden when the funeral comes. What did you set it up for? What would she have said? Or what would you say?
Oh, I set it up just to have just a little bit of extra coverage.
A little bit of extra coverage. Okay. I'm assuming you've got benefits like with your employer, you know, with other companies as well.
Yeah.
So we're one of your smaller policies, right?
To say the least.
Okay. Yeah. So when I'm looking at the 100,000, was there a reason why you didn't qualify for like your gold program or like option A? Why did you only qualify for option C?
That was the only thing that I thought I needed.
I gotcha. So when going over the 100,000, and I'll literally pull my whiteboard up and I'll just start spending it. Right. So I'm like, all right, so, you know, you're like in your 30s. Okay. How, if you don't mind me asking, how old was your mom when she died?
Oh, she's still alive.
She's still alive. And your dad?
Still alive.
Okay. Like 60s, 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So fair to say that statistically, if we're going based off genetics, you're good. You're good, Chloe. You can hop off if you need. I'm recording it. Okay. So statistically, if we're going based off genetics, you're going to live another 40, 50 years as long as God allows it, right? So do you think a funeral is going to cost the same as it does today in 50 years?
No.
Absolutely not, right? 10 years ago, funerals were like $7,500 and now they're almost $30,000. So though you were really, really smart in getting this set up, I want to make sure that regardless if you die tomorrow or 50 years from now, that those kids aren't having to come out of pocket for anything. Right. And the good thing about you getting American Income is we eliminate the widow's blackout period. You can go over that in the beginning. I recorded it. And then I kind of go through it. And I'm just like, so do you have any debt right now? Like, are your cars paid off? Is your home paid off? Did she have everything paid off?
So the house was an inheritance of hers.
Okay.
So it had been passed down. And when I said the $100,000 wasn't going to go far, you know, because I did tell her that. I mean, I'm like, that's taxes alone on that house in River Oaks for a year.
Mhm.
Like, that's just to cover the taxes, right? And she just still was just like, nope. She's like, I've got a Bentley that's out there completely paid for. My house is completely paid for. My kids are good. They're on scholarships. Like, they don't need anything from me. I was just like, holy cow. That's just the first time that I've ever had somebody just that hard of a no.
In that scenario, I probably would have found all of that out when I was A, reviewing the policy, and then B, when I was, you're welcome, Chloe, or B, when I was kind of going over the needs analysis. I'm going to find out about all of that. She's going to tell me because she's going to be proud about it, right? So
Yeah.
instead of me fighting a too much insurance rebuttal, you know what I would rather do? When in doubt, what do we do? Pitch
Cancer.
cancer, right? So when in doubt, pitch cancer. Okay. So I would literally at my needs analysis, once I'm done and she's all proud of the insurance she's got, I'm gonna hype her up, right? I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. I'm like, listen, Megan, everything you've got set up, you know, with your policies and your life insurance, everything looks great, man. You know, I can definitely tell that you're the type of mom that really cares about her family and you don't want to kind of be any kind of burden when something happens. Am I getting that feeling right?
Yes.
Everything regarding your policies and your life insurance, everything looks so good. However, there was one major gap that the software came up with here that unfortunately no one we've seen has any type of solution for, and that's cancer.
Cancer.
And Megan, I guarantee you, you know,
Should have bought that.
say it again.
Should have bought that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So also make sure that you understand what you're pitching and when you're pitching it. You can't like do it last minute. And if she didn't buy the insurance or want to upgrade, you can't be like, oh, well, we also have these great cancer plans. Can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I was too far gone at that point. So I just was like,
Yeah.
okay, I got another set. Like, let's go, you know, like call me if you need me.
So my thing.
Thank you so much, Monica. Clayton's asking for me to jump on, but I appreciate it so much. And will you let us know where you're putting this?
I'll put it in the chat, or I'll put it in the group me, and then whoever will send it.
Okay, thanks so much, guys.
Not a problem. Bye, Megan.
Bye.
All right, cool. Well, any other questions? We good? Shelby, Nicole?
I put one in the chat.
How do you handle the guys flirting?
Flirt back.
Yeah, it could be used to your advantage.
Okay.
They're not
Absolutely.
creepy 60-year-old men telling you to get up and turn around. Like, stay in control, but don't deal with those, right? So you can butterfly your eyes and stuff. I used to have issues with people buying just because she was like super pretty, and then they'd cancel like a week later, right? So solidification. She's like, you're not just getting this because like my perfume smells good, or like, you know, you like the way I look. Like, you're getting this because you really, really need it, right? Because if not, then I'll tear this folder right now if that's not the reason you got it. Right. So she would add that to your solidification, but don't deal with like creepy weirdos. If they're like interrupting you constantly, like being real flirty and not even listening to what you're saying, just be like, honestly, Mark, you're making me like super uncomfortable. I'm a professional. I don't mix like this pleasure at all. So am I going to be able to get through this with you, or do you want to go ahead and just hop off now?
Okay.
Bye. Like, I ain't trying to deal with that. And if they don't want to hop off and they're being weird, then remove, yeet, bye.
Because see, that's the one thing that I didn't want to happen is like you're just flirting and they just get it just for that moment. And then next thing you know, they don't want it anymore. You know, they don't want it anymore, or they just pay 1 month and then they're gone because they just were flirting with you, maybe trying to get your number and everything. Like I don't mind flirting, but I want to stay professional at the same time, and just needed some verbiage to give them to tell them that, you know, I'm trying to stay professional, but don't mind batting my eyes or, you know, doing anything like that, but not going too far.
What I used to do in the field is I just wore a ring. I just wore a ring.
Okay.
I'll flirt and I'm like, man, you're funny, you know. Anyways, so the next thing I'm going to go over with you guys, but if anyone's making you uncomfortable, like the good thing is that we're on Zoom. Like I used to knock on the door that told me they had a girlfriend, and then as soon as I got to the door, their shirt was off and they're like, oh, she's not here. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go get something from my car real quick. Skirt.
Right.
Yeah. So at least you're on Zoom. You can yeet them out whenever you want. Just never put yourself in a position to like where you're feeling uncomfortable or where you're feeling like the presentation's not going anywhere. I'm like, hey, you know, we're having fun and everything, but this is a really serious conversation. And this is probably one of the most important conversations you're going to have in your life. And I'm glad that you get to have it with me, but I really need you to focus and take me seriously. Can you do that? Because if not, I've got
Right.
families waiting. So can you, are you with me? Are you following along? Okay, cool.
I like that. I like that. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything else?
And
guys?
also, one more thing, also, now, just like Monica said, if they're uncomfortable, they make you uncomfortable, just remove them. Now, you will have
Okay.
those that will, talk to you. And the one thing I always use is Shy Girl. I don't know if ever y'all seen, what's that, Five Heartbeats, Shy Brother, but I use Shy Girl all the time. So this is pretty much how it goes. So, I'm talking to her and I'm like, okay, so the first law cause benefits child safe ID kit, which is endorsed by the International Human Police Association. He may interrupt, like, so are you married? Oh, yeah. Actually, I am. Okay. You see that?
Yeah. Okay.
That little blush thing, and it's like, okay. So
Yeah.
like I was saying, let me go ahead, and I'm sure a bunch of families with children, and honestly, I've gone through that whole thing. I'm like, well, I'm sure you're actually one of the type of people that I can talk to all day, but since I have a lot of people that I have to see,
Right.
I really I really have to go. Okay, so once we get
Okay.
down to solidification, you see, because that's the advantage that women have.
Okay. Right.
I'm not flirting back or in a verbal way. I'm just like, and to him, it's like, oh, she might be shy, that sort of thing, or whatever. I never really like say it to him or anything, or to her or anything. I don't care if it was a woman on the other end. Like, okay, let's go ahead and let's continue and move forward. Now, if it's someone like Monica said, they telling you to turn around, do all some uncomfortable, inappropriate things, just remove them. I won't even say until I just remove them and move on.
And you don't tell them anything when you remove them. You just be like, click.
To be quite honest with you, no one has ever cut into me like that.
Okay.
Because you gotta also understand, people will only do what you allow them to do. So if they feel like they have that entrance, they'll take it.
Yeah.
I don't even give you the option to do that. No one even comes to me in a cutthroat type of way anyway, just because of how I speak. So you may have to tweak your tone when you're talking, because maybe you still sound like you're unsure, because although you may be unsure, you don't need to sound like you're unsure. You need to sound like, this is what I do. This is what I've been doing. I never tell people how long I've been in the industry. I say, I've been doing this for a while. Okay. Whatever they believe is a while, that's up to them. I never said I was here for a year.
Okay.
So I never did that. Now, if someone specifically asks me, well, I don't think the number really matters, but I know that I've been doing this for a long time. And I mean, I'm very passionate about it, and I'm very passionate about who I serve. You just go around that. Like, you don't have to give a specific answer, but maybe there's something in your tonality that you probably need to tweak a little bit, so that you don't have people pretty much cutting into you in that way. It would be the same thing as if you were in a club, in a bar, at a church. If people feel like they can do that, they'll take that, they'll shoot that shot. But if they feel like, nope, it's a brick wall, I'm just going to keep my thoughts to myself, then they will.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys for that wisdom.
All right.
All right. Y'all good? Anything else? Wait, later, y'all. I'll get this recording sent out. No worries.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you so much, Nicole, Monica. Thanks for doing this today, Monica.
Not a problem.
All right, y'all.
Let's get
Bye,
it today.
guys.
Let's get it.
Bye.
Woo!